The HOA said my basketball hoop was a violation of community harmony. They sent letters, fines, even threats of legal action. All because my daughter liked to shoot hoops after school. So I gave them what they wanted. I took the hoop down. But what they didn't know is that I had already started building something much, much bigger, right next to their office. And when they found out, let's just say, they lost their minds. Hey guys, welcome back to HOA Stories, where the suburbs go crazy and justice sometimes wears flip-flops. I'm Jake. I live in a quiet, gated community in Arizona. You know, the kind where lawns look cloned, mailboxes match, and the HOA acts like the FBI of front yards. I moved here thinking I was buying peace and safety for my family. But what I really bought was a front-row seat to the pettiest war in America. Before I dive into what happened, make sure to hit subscribe. If you've ever been bullied by an HOA, or just hate people who think they own your driveway, drop a BOOO HOA in the comments right now. I read every single one of them. And if you've got friends who've ever fought their HOA, share this video with them. They'll feel this one. Alright, here's how my basketball hoop turned my peaceful neighborhood into a war zone. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. My daughter, Emily, had just come home from school. She dropped her backpack, ran to the driveway, and picked up her orange basketball, the one she'd been saving up for all summer. She looked at me with that big goofy grin. "Dad, first to 5? Of course, I said yes. We played, we laughed, neighbors waved as they drove by. It was just normal suburban life. Until she missed a shot. And the ball rolled across the sidewalk, right in front of her. Karen, the HOA vice president. Perfect beige suit, clipboard in hand, and a frown that could cut glass. She bent down, picked up the ball, and said, "Mr. Larson, you know, basketball hoops are temporary play equipment. They violate Section 4B of the HOA guidelines." I thought she was joking. I actually laughed. But she didn't. Next thing I know, I'm holding a violation notice taped to my mailbox. It said, "Remove unauthorized basketball structure within 48 hours or face a $200 fine per day." I swear, I could feel my blood pressure go up just reading it. I tried being reasonable. I went to the HOA meeting, wearing my nicest shirt, even brought cookies. And I explained, calmly, that my hoop was portable, safe, and in my own driveway. But Karen, she just looked at me over her glasses and said, "Rules are rules, Mr. Larson. If we let one person break them, everyone will." Everyone will what? Play basketball? Have fun? Be human? I was speechless. The next morning, I came outside to find a second letter. This one wasn't just a fine. It was a threat. Continued noncompliance may result in legal escalation and property lien action. Over a basketball hoop. My daughter asked, "Dad, are we in trouble?" And that's when something inside me snapped. No one scares my kid over a stupid rule. So yeah, I took down the hoop. At least, that's what they thought. That night, while the rest of the street was quiet and Karen's porch light blinked like a surveillance camera, I opened my laptop and started sketching. If they wanted to play power games, I'd show them how petty I could get too. I emailed a few friends, construction guys, old college buddies, and asked for a favor. By the next morning, I had a plan. I called it Operation Backyard Madness. Over the next 2 weeks, I started renovating my side yard. The HOA thought I was just building a patio extension. They didn't notice the concrete deliveries, or the stack of aluminum bleachers I bought from a closed-down community center. Oh, and the giant LED scoreboard I ordered online? Yeah, that was the cherry on top. Every evening, when Karen drove by with her dog, I'd wave and smile. She'd squint at the mess of materials, but she couldn't say a word. I was technically following the guidelines. Because nowhere in their rulebook did it say, "You can't build a private sports court." By week 3, the foundation was poured. Emily's eyes sparkled when I told her what it was. "Wait, you're building me an arena?" "Not just you," I said, grinning. "For everyone the HOA ever annoyed." She laughed so hard she almost dropped her Slurpee. But I wasn't laughing when Karen came knocking the next day, clipboard in hand. Her expression, pure panic. "Mr. Larson, what is this construction project?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Oh, just a little something for community engagement." She didn't like that answer. Not one bit. By the end of the month, the so-called violation had turned into the most talked-about spot in the neighborhood. People from nearby blocks started dropping by. Kids, teens, even a few dads with lawn chairs. When we finally flipped the switch and lit up that first backyard stadium game night, you could see the glow all the way from the HOA office. Karen called an emergency board meeting the next day. But me, I was already selling popcorn in my driveway. I knew this was only the beginning. Because when an HOA gets embarrassed, they don't back down. They strike back harder. So tell me this, if your HOA threatened to fine you over something harmless, would you fight back like I did? Or would you just take the hoop down? Backhand index pointing down. Let me know in the comments. I'm reading every story tonight. I thought things had finally quieted down. For a few days, there were no letters. No knocks. No threats taped to my mailbox. Just laughter. The sound of bouncing basketballs. Neighbors cheering as the sun went down. It actually felt nice. Peaceful. Like the neighborhood had become alive again. But peace never lasts long when an HOA's ego is bruised. 3 mornings later, I found a brand new envelope sitting on my porch. Bright red stamp on the corner, urgent, HOA board notice. Inside was a letter, 5 pages long, filled with words like unauthorized structure, public nuisance, and my personal favorite, intent to pursue legal remedies. In simple English, they wanted my arena gone. I could almost hear Karen's voice echoing from the page. That sharp, superior tone she used when she thought she was right. I stood there in my driveway, coffee in hand, reading the letter over and over. Emily came out with her basketball. "Dad, are they mad again?" I smiled. "They're always mad, sweetheart." Then I did what any reasonable suburban dad with a rebellious streak would do. I hung the letter right on the side of the bleachers, in a plastic frame, under a sign that said, "Sponsored by the HOA." The neighbors lost it. People came just to take selfies with the letter. Even the mailman gave me a thumbs up. But Karen wasn't laughing. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hedges, her white SUV pulled up again. She got out, heels clicking like gunshots on the pavement. Clipboard ready. Lips tight. "Mr. Larson," she started, "you are in direct violation of the HOA structural code. This," she waved her pen at the stadium, "must be removed immediately." I stayed calm. Almost too calm. "Karen," I said, "show me the exact line that says I can't build this." She blinked, flipped through her binder. You could almost see her brain short-circuiting. Finally she said, "It's implied." "Implied," I repeated, pretending to think. "Well, I don't break implied rules." I swear, her face turned the color of a ripe tomato. She stormed off, yelling something about legal proceedings and community standards. I just waved and said, "Don't forget to buy tickets for Friday night's game." By now, the whole neighborhood had taken sides. Half of them were cheering me on. The other half, the ones who spent more time polishing their mailboxes than smiling, acted like I was the devil. And right at the center of it all stood Karen. She started calling random inspections on my property. Noise complaints. Parking violations. Even tried saying the arena lights were disturbing local wildlife. I didn't even have wildlife. Unless you count Frank's cat that keeps stealing hot dogs during game nights. It was obvious. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about power, control, and the fact that a single dad with a basketball hoop had made her look small. One afternoon, while I was fixing the scoreboard wiring, I saw a city inspector walking toward my yard. Clipboard in hand. Reflective vest. You could tell instantly he was here for me. He said, "Sir, we've received an anonymous report that you're running an unlicensed event venue." I almost laughed. Anonymous. Yeah, right. Karen was practically watching us from her window, binoculars and all. I handed him a soda. Told him to take a look around. He checked the court, bleachers, wiring. Then looked at me and said, "Everything's within code. You're good." I asked him to put that in writing. And when he did, I made 3 copies. One for me, one for the HOA, and one laminated on the arena gate that said, "Certified. Safe. Legal." That night's tournament was the biggest one yet. Families from 2 streets over came by. We even had a small trophy, a golden hoop I bought off eBay. Emily was the announcer. She had a little mic and everything. It was adorable. The laughter, the cheers, the smell of popcorn. For a moment, I forgot all about the HOA drama. Until the police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out. Not angry. Not even serious-looking. More like confused. "Sir," one of them said, "we got a noise complaint from the HOA office." Of course they did. I nodded, handed them a bag of popcorn. "Officers, this is a family event, ends at 9 sharp. You're welcome to watch the last quarter." They looked at each other, shrugged, and actually stayed. When the game ended, the officer clapped me on the back and said, "Good defense, man." I looked over Karen's house. Her blinds were shut, but I could almost feel the steam coming out of her ears. The next morning, another letter showed up. This one was shorter, but nastier. "Mr. Larson, your continued defiance represents a danger to our community's reputation. The board will be taking decisive action." Decisive action? What was that supposed to mean? I didn't have to wonder long. 2 days later, I came home from work to find orange cones around my driveway, and a construction notice posted on my property. Apparently, the HOA had approved sidewalk maintenance that just so happened to block my arena entrance. Coincidence? Not a chance. They were trying to choke me out. Make it impossible for anyone to come watch. Karen stood across the street, pretending to walk her dog, smirking like she'd just won the lottery. But she underestimated me. Big time. That night, I sat down with my buddies and said, "All right, guys, time for Phase 2. We moved the games. Not to my driveway, but to the empty lot right beside the HOA office, the one that had been unused for years. Turns out, that lot technically belonged to the city, not the HOA. We set up portable lights, folding chairs, and painted a new court with chalk. By the next evening, the HOA arena had a new home. And when Karen drove by the next morning on her way to work, her jaw literally dropped. Right in front of her office window, a dozen kids were playing basketball, and every parent in the neighborhood was cheering. That night, she showed up again. "Mr. Larson," she snapped, "this is harassment. You can't." I cut her off. "Karen, this is public property. You should thank me for improving community engagement." She glared at me. "Enjoy it while it lasts, Mr. Larson. The board has plans." Then she turned and walked off, heels echoing on the pavement like gunshots. I didn't know what those plans were yet. But something told me the real war was just beginning. If your HOA tried everything to shut you down, even blocked your driveway, what's your next move? Keep fighting, or hit them where it hurts most? Backhand index pointing down. Tell me in the comments. I've got popcorn ready for your answers. For about a week, things went quiet again. Too quiet. No letters. No cones. No Karen. Just the sound of kids playing ball beside the HOA office, like some suburban miracle. I should have known that calm meant a storm was coming. The warning. It started with a knock at my door one Saturday morning. I opened it, half asleep, still holding my coffee. There stood a man in a navy blazer, shiny shoes, and an expression that screamed, "Official business." "Mr. Larson, I'm Tom Bennett, newly appointed president of the HOA." Newly appointed? That meant Karen wasn't president anymore. But knowing her, she was still pulling strings. He smiled politely, that fake customer service smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "We'd like to extend an olive branch," he said. "The board feels this conflict has escalated unnecessarily." I raised an eyebrow. Escalated? You tried to block my driveway. He chuckled softly, ignoring the jab. Look, Mr. Larson. We can make this easy. You take down the arena, permanently, and we'll erase the fines, the complaints, all of it. I took a slow sip of coffee. And if I don't? His smile froze. Then you'll force us to involve city zoning. And legal counsel. He handed me a fresh letter, thicker paper this time, embossed HOA logo at the top. I didn't even open it. I just said, "Tell Karen I said hi," and closed the door in his face. The setup. I knew what this was. They wanted me to flinch, to fold under pressure. But they didn't realize, at this point, it wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about principle. So I got to work. I gathered every single neighbor who'd ever complained about the HOA, late trash fines, mailbox paint warnings, lawn height violations, and invited them over. My living room looked like a rebellion meeting. Coffee, donuts, and years of bottled-up frustration. All right, I said, they think they can bully one of us. But what if all of us push back? A few hesitant looks at first, then nods, then applause. We decided to file a collective complaint against the HOA for harassment and misuse of power. Karen had built her kingdom on fear. We were about to shake the foundation. The trap. A few days later, I received a notice that the city inspector would visit the new arena site. Again. This time, I was ready. When the inspector arrived, I had 2 neighbors filming on their phones. And I'd already spoken to a local news reporter who'd been covering neighborhood conflicts for a weekend segment. The inspector did his walk-around, clipboard in hand. And when he was done, he turned to the camera and said, "Everything appears compliant. No violations here." You could practically hear Karen's scream echoing from her living room. That clip went viral locally, 30,000 views in 2 days. Comments flooded in. HOA's gone too far. Let the man play ball. Team Jake for life. The counterattack. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no. She found a new way to fight. The next board meeting, they announced a community fundraiser event. Guess where it would be held? Right in the empty lot where my arena stood. They were trying to reclaim the space. Banners went up. Flyers everywhere. HOA Family Day, games, food, fun. Except, no one showed up. The residents were tired of them. Tired of the rules, the letters, the fake smiles. Meanwhile, my arena hosted its own event that same day. Neighborhood Freedom Tournament. Free snacks, loud music, laughter echoing through the streets. And when someone posted a side-by-side photo, the HOA's empty field versus our packed game night, it spread like wildfire on social media. Karen's plan had officially backfired. The desperation. 2 nights later, around midnight, I heard a strange noise outside. Metal clanking. Footsteps. I looked through the window and saw a flashlight beam moving near the court. I stepped out quietly. There she was, Karen herself, with 2 men from the HOA board, trying to unscrew the hoop. "Seriously?" I said. She froze like a deer in headlights. "We're enforcing community property protection," she stammered. "At midnight?" I asked. "Do you carry screwdrivers as part of your bedtime routine?" She looked furious. "You're violating the quiet hours ordinance." I laughed. "Lady, you're literally breaking into city property right now." I pulled out my phone and hit record. She tried to cover her face, mumbling something about miscommunication, but it was too late. The video was gold. Next morning, boom, it was all over our local Facebook group. Thousands of comments. Dozens of memes. Someone even edited dramatic music under it. Karen had officially become the villain of the neighborhood. The shift. By the following week, the HOA's tone changed completely. No more letters. No more threats. Instead, I got another knock at the door, this time, from Tom Bennett again. He looked defeated. "Mr. Larson, the board wants to resolve this peacefully." I folded my arms. "Define peacefully." "We'll drop all complaints if you agree to keep events under 9 p.m. and manage parking." I smiled. "Deal." But on one condition, you and Karen come to our next game night." He blinked. "I don't think those are my terms." He sighed. "I'll relay the message." The showdown. Friday night came. Crowds gathered again. Music playing. Kids laughing. The smell of grilled burgers floating through the air. And then, like clockwork, Karen appeared. Still in her beige blazer. Still holding that clipboard. But this time, she didn't yell. Didn't threaten. She just stood there, watching as Emily scored a three-pointer and everyone cheered. For a moment, I saw something soften in her face. Jealousy. Regret. Maybe just exhaustion. Then she turned and quietly left. The victory. Later that night, as we packed up chairs, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Tom Bennett. Effective immediately, the HOA will be revising community recreation policies to allow supervised sports areas. I actually laughed out loud. After months of fighting, threats, and drama, they were finally changing the rules. The arena stayed. Legally. Permanently. And every time I walk past that sign, Community Court, sponsored by the HOA, I can't help but smile. Because they didn't beat me. They built my legacy. If your HOA suddenly changed the rules because of you, would you forgive them, or keep reminding them who really won? Backhand index pointing down. Drop your thoughts. I'm reading the savage ones first tonight. Fire. For a while, it felt like I'd finally won. No more letters. No surprise inspections. No cones, no Karen. Just peace, and the sound of basketballs echoing in the Arizona heat. Neighbors waved when they drove by. Kids called it Larson Court. Even the mailman stopped to shoot hoops on his lunch break. It felt like victory. But you know how it is with HOAs. They never really quit. They just wait. And one morning, they struck again. The letter that changed everything. It came in a clean white envelope. No red stamps this time. No threats. Just a polite letter with a fancy header. City of Mesa, Department of Zoning and Development. Inside, it read, "A complaint has been filed regarding an unpermitted recreational structure located adjacent to the HOA office. You are required to attend a hearing regarding possible code violations." I knew exactly who filed it. And her name started with a K. Karen was back. But this time, she wasn't playing HOA games. She'd gone straight to the city. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the letter. Emily looked over my shoulder. "Dad, are they gonna take it away?" I smiled, trying to stay calm. "Not if I have anything to say about it." But truth is, I was nervous. The arena had become more than just a court. It was our place, our family's little rebellion. If the city ordered it gone, it would feel like they'd won. The hearing. The following Thursday, I walked into City Hall wearing my best shirt. The room smelled like paperwork and coffee that had been reheated too many times. Across the table sat two city officials. And right beside them, Karen and Tom from the HOA. Karen smiled, that smug, victory before the battle kind of smile. The city rep started. "Mr. Larson, the HOA claims you've constructed a semi-permanent recreational facility on public property without authorization." I took a deep breath. "Respectfully, sir, that property belongs to the city. And everything built there is portable, not permanent." Karen jumped in. "It's an eyesore. It brings traffic. And people leave trash." The official raised his hand. "Ms. Karen, is it? We'll let Mr. Larson finish." I opened my folder. Pulled out the laminated city inspection approval I got 2 months ago. "This document right here," I said, sliding it across the table, "declares the structure safe, compliant, and temporary." The official adjusted his glasses, reading it carefully. Then looked up and said, "He's right. There's no violation here." You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face turned pale. Tom looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Then the official added, "Frankly, I think it's great community use. Maybe we should talk about expanding recreation access." Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. The twist. I thought that would be the end of it. But later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from a city employee I knew, an old friend from college. He wrote, "Jake, heads up. HOA filed another complaint, this time about event permits and parking. They're trying to push it through city council." These people just didn't quit. So I decided, if they wanted to take this public, I'd make it very public. The public hearing. City council meetings are usually boring. Budget talks, zoning laws, people arguing about sidewalks. But that night, the place was packed. Half the neighborhood showed up wearing custom t-shirts that said, "Team Larson, let US play." Someone even brought a mini basketball hoop and set it up by the door. When the mayor called my name, I stood up and walked to the podium. I wasn't nervous this time. "Good evening," I said. "I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a dad who built a safe place for kids to play. We're not disturbing peace, we're building it." A few people clapped. I turned toward the council and added, "HOAs should protect communities, not punish them." The crowd went wild. Karen stepped up next, clutching her binder like a shield. "This arena is disruptive, unregulated, and undermines our community's image." The mayor raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, your HOA doesn't own that land." "Understand," she stammered. But what?" he said, leaning forward. "From what I'm hearing, it's bringing families together. That's what we want in this city." You could see her deflate. By the end of the hearing, the council voted unanimously, not only to let the arena stay, but to officially register it as a community recreation zone. They even approved a small city grant for maintenance and lighting. The reaction. That night, the neighborhood was on fire, not literally, but with excitement. People cheered. Cars honked. Someone brought cake. And me. I stood in the middle of the court, looking up at the scoreboard that now read, "Official City Recreation Court, approved by Mesa Council." I almost couldn't believe it. We'd beaten the HOA, with their own weapon, bureaucracy. Karen drove by slowly, window down, face frozen in disbelief. I waved. "Nice seeing you, Karen. Come by for a free throw sometime." She didn't answer. Just sped off into the night. The payback. A week later, I got a handwritten note in my mailbox. No HOA letterhead, no threats. Just one line. "Congratulations, Mr. Larson. You won. K." I kept it. Framed it. Hung it right beside the original violation notice. 2 trophies side by side. Proof that sometimes, being petty pays off. The new normal. Now, every Friday night, the court fills with people. Kids playing. Parents chatting. Even a few HOA members show up, awkwardly, but they come. We renamed the scoreboard. It now flashes, "Welcome to Freedom Court." Emily loves it. She says, "Dad, we built something real." And maybe she's right. Because sometimes, winning isn't about money, or rules, or revenge. Sometimes, it's just about standing your ground until they stop pushing. But one evening, as I was locking up the court, I saw a black SUV stop near the curb. Tinted windows. Engine running. A man in a suit stepped out, looked around, then slipped a white envelope under the court gate. I waited until he left. Opened it. Inside was a business card from a property development company. And a note that read, "We're interested in purchasing this land for expansion. Please contact us." I looked up at the dark sky. And just whispered, "They're not done yet, are they?" If a big company suddenly offered to buy your victory, would you sell it, or fight to protect it forever? Backhand index pointing down. Drop your answer below. This story's just getting started. Basketball fire. I stared at that white envelope for a long time. The business card felt heavier than it should have. Sleek black print, gold logo. Everstone Property Group. Never heard of them. But the note. That was the part that made my gut twist. "We're interested in purchasing this land for expansion." Expansion of what? The HOA didn't own this land. The city approved it as a community recreation area. So why were developers sniffing around now? That night, I called my buddy Chris, the same city employee who'd tipped me off before. "Hey man," I said, keeping my voice low. "You ever heard of a company called Everstone Property Group?" He paused, then sighed. "Yeah. I was hoping you wouldn't. The Whisper Network." Chris explained everything. Apparently, the HOA board had been in talks with Everstone for months, trying to revitalize the community, which was just a fancy word for selling parts of the neighborhood to developers for cash. And guess which part they wanted to sell first? Yep. The little strip of city land where Freedom Court stood, even though the council had approved it for recreation. Everstone was offering to buy out the city's interest. Money talks. And apparently, it talks louder than community votes. The secret meeting. Chris sent me a screenshot. An internal calendar invite. Private HOA strategy session. Attendees: Karen, Tom, Everstone Rep, City Liaison. Location: the HOA office. Time: tomorrow, 8 p.m. I read it 3 times. Then said, "You think I could get in?" Chris laughed. "Only if you sneak through the back door." I smiled. Good thing I built the arena right next to it. The next evening, I waited until the sun dipped behind the palm trees. The air was cool, quiet. You could hear the crickets over the distant hum of traffic. I turned off my phone light, crept through the side of the court, and stood behind the chain-link fence that separated Freedom Court from the HOA office. The office windows glowed yellow, and through the thin glass, I saw them, Karen, Tom, and 2 men in suits. One of the suits was talking, pointing at a map on the table. I moved closer, crouching by the AC unit, trying to catch words. Cities already in soft talks. Conditional transfer possible. We can rezone by spring. Larson structure can be classified as temporary use, easy to remove. My heart thudded in my chest. They were planning to erase it, all of it. The tournaments, the kids' laughter, the whole symbol of our fight. Karen leaned forward and said, "Once that land's cleared, we can finally move forward with our Community Plaza plan." Community Plaza. That's what she was calling it. It was like renaming a graveyard memory park. Caught. I must have leaned too close, because the AC unit rattled under my foot. Karen's head snapped toward the window. "Did you hear that?" The men turned. I froze, heart pounding. Tom opened the door and stepped outside, flashlight in hand. I ducked behind the fence, pressed flat against the metal, barely breathing. The beam of light swept across the court, my court, then moved closer. Tom's voice. Probably just a raccoon. He shut the door. I waited another 30 seconds before I exhaled. Close call. But at least I had what I needed. The plan. The next morning, I called a neighborhood meeting. I stood in the middle of Freedom Court, holding up the Everstone envelope. "They're trying to sell this land," I said. "They want to tear this place down." People gasped. Someone yelled, "They can't do that." "Oh, they can," I said. "Unless we make it impossible." We spent hours planning, petitions, social posts, emails to the city. Chris helped me get a copy of the HOA's development proposal draft. The title read, Community Enhancement Project, Phase 1. And right there, in small print under Land Acquisition Zone A, was our court. The fire starter. The next day, I uploaded a video. Title: HOA and developers secretly plan to demolish our community court. Within hours, it exploded. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. People across the country started tagging their own HOAs, calling out power abuse. News channels picked it up. Even local radio hosts started saying, "Mesa Man takes on HOA and corporate developers, and wins hearts online." The fallout. By the end of the week, Everstone released a statement. "We respect community concerns and will pause all discussions regarding redevelopment in the Larson neighborhood." The HOA, though, they weren't done pretending. Karen released a statement too. "All smiles, all lies. We were merely exploring ideas to improve the community." Mr. Larson's reaction was premature. Premature, my ass. But the damage was done, to her reputation this time. Half the neighborhood wanted her off the board. There were petitions, angry posts, even lawn signs that said, "No more HOA dictatorship." The unexpected visitor. One night, about a week later, someone knocked on my door. It was one of the men from that meeting, not Karen, not Tom, but one of the Everstone guys. He looked nervous, glancing around like he didn't want to be seen. "Mr. Larson," he said softly, "can I talk to you?" I crossed my arms. "Why?" He took out a folder and handed it to me. Inside were documents, blueprints, emails, maps. "This wasn't just the HOA," he said. "They were promised commission on the sale. Personal kickbacks. We have proof." I looked at him, stunned. "You're telling me Karen and Tom were going to profit from selling city property?" He nodded. I couldn't go along with it. Then he walked away into the night. The exposure. The next morning, I forwarded everything to a local reporter who'd been following my story. By noon, it was headline news. HOA board under investigation for secret deal with developers. Reporters camped outside the HOA office. Karen stopped showing up entirely. Tom resigned within 48 hours. It was chaos, the kind of chaos that feels satisfying. The city's response. Within a week, the city held an emergency hearing. The mayor announced, effective immediately, the HOA's management authority is suspended pending investigation. And then, the part that made my jaw drop. We're also designating Freedom Court as a permanent community landmark under city protection. Permanent. Not temporary. Not revocable. Permanent. The whole crowd cheered. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. The quiet moment. Later that night, Emily and I stood on the court under the floodlights. She looked up at the scoreboard and said, "Dad, we really did it." I smiled. "Yeah, kiddo. We did." She thought for a second. "Do you think they'll ever stop?" I laughed. "HOAs? No. But now, they'll think twice before messing with us." She smiled, shot the ball, and it swished clean through the net. Perfect shot. But then, as we packed up to go home, I noticed something strange. Across the street, near the old oak tree, a car sat idling. No headlights, no movement. Just watching. I squinted, but couldn't see inside. Emily tugged my sleeve. "Dad, is that?" The car's headlights flicked on, and it sped away. I frowned, staring after it. There was a new kind of tension in the air. Not HO. Not city. Something else entirely. If someone tried to buy your silence after exposing corruption, would you take the deal, or keep fighting no matter what? Backhand index pointing down. Comment your answer, because what happens next will shock everyone. Basketball fire. The next few days felt uneasy. Freedom Court was safe now. The HOA board was under investigation. Karen had gone dark. And for the first time in months, I actually slept without checking my mailbox first. But that car from the night before kept replaying in my mind. Black sedan. No plates I could see. Just headlights cutting through the dark. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until the same car showed up again. The pattern. 2 nights later, around 9 p.m., I was walking my dog. And there it was, parked 2 houses down. Lights off. Engine running. I froze. After a few seconds, it pulled away slowly, turned the corner, and disappeared. That was no coincidence. Someone was watching me. The next morning, I told Chris. He didn't even sound surprised. "Jake," he said, "I think you poked a hornet's nest." "What do you mean?" "You remember Everstone Group?" "Yeah." "Well," he sighed, "they're not just buying land here. They've been cutting deals with HOAs across 3 counties. Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert. It's big." "How big?" He hesitated. "Millions. Maybe tens of millions. The HOA boards act as the middlemen. They pressure homeowners, push them out, then sell the land under redevelopment clauses." I felt my stomach drop. "And you," Chris continued, "just exposed one of their biggest contracts." The offer. That afternoon, I found another envelope on my doorstep. No return address. Just my name in neat, typed letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Mr. Larson, we appreciate your passion for community. However, you've interfered in private business matters. Cease public discussion of Everstone immediately, or legal action will be pursued. Consider this your only warning. At the bottom, a signature. E. Langford, Legal Director, Everstone Group. I read it 3 times, then laughed. They thought a threat would work. They clearly didn't understand how stubborn I'd become. The next day, a white SUV pulled up outside my house. 2 men in suits stepped out, calm, professional, smiling that fake kind of smile people wear when they're about to lie. Mr. Larson, one asked. Depends who's asking. They flashed badges, private security licenses. We're here to discuss a potential arrangement, one said. Arrangement for what? Your silence. I didn't move. He continued. Our client is willing to offer compensation for your discretion. A non-disclosure agreement, plus a financial settlement. I folded my arms. Let me guess. You'll bulldoze the court once I sign? The second man smiled thinly. Think of it as progress. I stepped closer. Tell your client progress doesn't scare me, corruption does. Their smiles faded. One of them leaned in and said quietly, You're making powerful people nervous, Mr. Larson. Nervous people do unpredictable things. Then they left. The choice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the framed violation notice, and Karen's little "You won" note beside it. Was I really ready for whatever came next? Emily walked in, rubbing her eyes. Dad, you okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, just thinking. She climbed up beside me. You're thinking too loud again. I laughed, kissed her head. But inside, I was terrified. Because I knew, this wasn't just an HOA story anymore. The leak. The next morning, I drove to the local news station. I met with a reporter named Dana. She was the same one who'd run my story before. When I showed her the new letter, she raised an eyebrow. You've got something big here, she said. This isn't just local corruption. This could tie into state contracts. I gave her everything, emails, screenshots, blueprints, the threats. She said she'd dig deeper. But she warned me, if what you're saying is true, they won't just stop at letters. The escalation. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Larson, a deep voice said. You've made some mistakes. I hung up immediately. Blocked the number. 2 hours later, my power went out. Not the neighborhood's, just mine. The next morning, I found my mailbox ripped off its post and thrown into the street. They were sending a message. The backup. I wasn't stupid. I knew I couldn't handle this alone. So I called a lawyer, one who hated HOAs as much as I did. His name was Dan Whitaker, ex-HOA president turned whistleblower. When I explained everything, he chuckled darkly. Son, I've seen this movie before, he said. Developers and HOAs, they're like 2 sides of the same coin. You take one down, the other flips. So what do we do? Asked. We make noise. A lot of it. Before they can bury you under paperwork. The explosion. 2 days later, the story broke nationally. HOA developer kickback scheme uncovered. Multiple Arizona boards under investigation. Every major outlet ran it. People started digging through their own HOA paperwork across the country. It was chaos. Chris called me that night, half laughing, half panicking. Jake, you've started a movement, man. I smiled weakly. Yeah, but they're not done yet. The pushback. Sure enough, a week later, I was served with a lawsuit. Defamation, interference with business, libel. 50 pages long. Filed by Everstone. Dan grinned when he read it. Typical scare tactic, he said. They don't expect to win. They just want to drain you. He filed a counterclaim for harassment and intimidation. And then, something unexpected happened. The city stepped in. The turn. Mesa City Council held a press conference. "We stand with Mr. Larson and the residents of his neighborhood," the mayor said. "Freedom Court represents what community should be: integrity, unity, and resilience." They offered to cover my legal defense. Karen's name appeared again, this time in official reports linking her to Everstone payments. It was over for her. The calm before the storm. A week later, I walked the court at sunset. The lights hummed softly. The paint gleamed gold under the glow. I thought about everything that had happened. The fines, the letters, the lawsuits, the threats. And somehow, I still had the court standing strong. I leaned on the fence, whispering, "Guess we won again, huh?" Then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You exposed one chapter. But there's more. Check your email." My heart jumped. I opened my laptop, pulled up my inbox. One new message. No subject, no sender name. Just one line of text. "HOA project. Phase 2 is already underway." Attached was a PDF. And when I opened it, it was a map. Not of my neighborhood, but 10 others across the state. Each marked with red circles labeled Proposed Redevelopment Zones. And right at the bottom, a familiar signature. E. Langford, Everstone Group. If you found proof that your entire state's HOAs were secretly selling land to developers, would you risk everything to expose them, or walk away before they ruin your life? Backhand index pointing down. Tell me in the comments, because the next part is where everything explodes basketball fire. When I opened that PDF, my hands actually shook. 10 neighborhoods, 10 HOAs, all marked for redevelopment, and every single one of them tied to Everstone Group. It wasn't just my court. It wasn't just Karen. It was a system. And I had the proof sitting right on my laptop screen. The web. Each red circle on that map came with a label. Greenfield HOA, negotiated. Ironwood Estates, pending approval. Silverstone, legal hold. They were everywhere. Every HOA that had revitalization plans in the last 2 years was part of this, and each one had a board member receiving payments through shell accounts. Fake consulting fees, hidden under community improvement funds. They'd been selling off pieces of their own neighborhoods, one playground, one park, one basketball hoop at a time. I wasn't the problem. I was the obstacle. And Everstone wanted obstacles gone. The plan. I called Dana, the reporter, right away. "You sitting down?" I said. When she saw the documents, she just whispered, "Oh my God." We spent hours cross-checking names, payment trails, property transfers. Every connection led to someone new. City planners, HOA lawyers, even a former councilman. It wasn't corruption, it was infrastructure. A machine built to turn neighborhoods into money. Dana looked at me, her face pale. "If we go public with this, you'll need protection." I smiled, tired but certain. I'm not the one who needs protection anymore. The broadcast. 2 days later, Dana's exposé aired. Headline: The HOA Cartel, How Developers Secretly Control Arizona Neighborhoods. The story spread like wildfire. News anchors said my name on live TV. People I'd never met sent messages like, "You gave us courage to stand up to our HOAs." We had no idea this was happening. Freedom Court turned into a symbol. A rally point for homeowners everywhere. People started calling it the court that fought back. The backlash. But Everstone didn't stay quiet. They released their own statement. "These allegations are exaggerated and unfounded. We operate legally and transparently." Then, my lawyer Dan called with bad news. "Jake, someone filed a civil injunction against you." "For what?" "For public defamation and incitement." He sighed. "They're trying to shut you down again. This time, through the courts." I laughed. They never learn, do they? The strike. A week later, I woke up to chaos. Police cars. News vans. People shouting outside my house. The local news headline read, "Freedom Court vandalized overnight, suspected arson attempt." My heart sank. I ran outside. The court's fence was scorched, nets burned, backboards shattered. Someone had tried to destroy it. Neighbors gathered, angry and heartbroken. Emily stood beside me, tears in her eyes. "Dad, who would do this?" I clenched my fists. "I think we both know." The rebuild. The very next day, the neighborhood showed up. Dozens of people. Buckets of paint. Wood, drills, extension cords. Even strangers came from nearby towns. One guy said, "I drove 40 miles, man. You're the reason my HOA backed off." By sunset, the court was whole again. Fresh paint. Brighter lights. Stronger hoops. Freedom Court 2.0. I stood in the center, surrounded by cheers, and shouted, "Let them come. We're not backing down." The turning point. That night, Dana called again. "You watching the news?" I turned on the TV. The state attorney general had just announced an official investigation into Everstone Group and multiple HOA boards. It was happening. The dominoes were falling. And then she said something that froze me in place. "Jake, someone inside Everstone leaked everything. Emails, contracts, bank transfers. They called themselves the neighbor." The screen showed scrolling documents, names, money, property details. They were finished. The fallout. Within a month, arrests started. Everstone executives, corrupt board members, even a few city insiders. Karen's name was on the list. They called it the Suburbia scheme. It made national headlines. Talk shows discussed it for weeks. People finally saw what HOAs had become, not protectors of community, but parasites feeding off it. And somehow, the fight that started over one basketball hoop ended up changing laws. The state passed the Homeowner Protection Act, limiting HOA power and requiring full financial transparency. Freedom Court wasn't just a victory anymore. It was history. The moment. Months later, on a quiet Friday evening, Emily and I stood at the court again. The sky glowed orange with the setting sun. You could hear the bounce of basketballs and laughter echoing down the street. She looked up at me and said, "Dad, it's crazy how it all started." I smiled. "Yeah. All because someone told us to take down a hoop." She grinned. "And you built an arena instead." The letter. That night, as I locked the gate, I saw something taped to the fence. A small, folded note. No name. No logo. Just a handwritten line. Some HOAs were corrupt. But not all of us. Be careful who you trust next. Underneath, a drawing of a small house with an eye inside. I stared at it for a long time. Part warning. Part mystery. Was the neighbor still out there? The reflection. A few weeks later, Dana asked if I'd do a documentary interview. When she asked me on camera, "What kept you fighting?" I smiled and said, "Because once you've seen what's behind the picket fences, you can't pretend it's just about lawns and mailboxes anymore." The legacy. Now, Freedom Court has its own plaque. It reads, "Dedicated to every homeowner who refused to be silenced." Every time I walk past it, I still hear the echo of that first bounce. The night I decided enough was enough. It's not about the hoop anymore. It's about freedom. And maybe that's what scares them most. If your one small act of defiance could start a nationwide movement, would you still take the risk, or play it safe and stay quiet? Basketball fire. Comment below, and remember, every court, every voice, every homeowner matters. Backhand index pointing down.